West Point is pulling a fast one, and y'all are falling for it. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and last week, West Point announced a change to their mission statement. And as you can imagine, there has been a hue and a cry from media outlets that something disastrous is going on because West Point replaced their motto, Duty, Honor, Country, with the phrase Army Values. Now, look, there is something really strange going on with the Academy's mission statement, and I'll walk you through it in a second, but it has nothing to do with a contest between the motto and the Army values. I mean, if anything, shouldn't the cadets coming out of West Point be committed to the values that the rest of the Army holds? And if I put my tinfoil hat on, I would say that the superintendent of West Point drew attention to this whole duty, honor, country edit because he didn't want people to pay attention to the real change. A change that, I don't know, might be cause for alarm. So what I'm going to show you is a technique that I've applied dozens and dozens of times when we had to review some sort of policy change for something that had evolved over decades. I'm going to walk you through about 100 years worth of West Point mission statement changes. And once I'm done, you're going to see that there are at least two things to be concerned about that have nothing to do with the current media storm. First of all, I want to thank the good folks at the West Point Public Affairs Office for providing a list of the West Point mission statements going back to 1925. That saved me a heck of a lot of digging. To get started, here is the 1925 version of the mission statement. And it's kind of bland. To provide a 4-year course of instruction and training for the Corps of Cadets, which will prepare its graduates for commission in the regular Army. It's sort of ho-hum, and the reason for that is because it is a direct quote from the AR 350-1 of 1925. It's just the mission that headquarters of the Army gave West Point. And as we move forward, what you'll see is how this mission statement gets restated from the perspective of West Point, which is sort of a typical thing that military organizations do as they develop their missions. But I want to draw your attention to 2 points with this initial mission statement that are going to echo through the next 100 years. First, the mission statement breaks down into 3 parts: what West Point does, what output they produce, and what organization benefits from their output. So I use these 3 boxes to break it apart. The second theme that's going to remain relatively constant are 3 phrases that are the focus of the mission statement: the Corps of the Cadets, the graduates, and the Army. And I'll just tell you now that by the time we get done, you will realize that this new 2024 mission statement has some surprising changes about how it refers to the graduates and how it refers to the Army. Okay, in 1940, West Point did the most dramatic overhaul of their mission statement that we're going to see. They got rid of the 4-year program in the first part. They made big changes in the middle part, and I will draw your attention to the phrase, "so that each graduate." This is going to remain relatively constant and will be part of the alarming changes in the new mission statement. Then, in the bottom part, they clarify that it is not enough just to get commissioned. The expectation is that each graduate will have a lifetime career as an officer in the regular Army. That mission statement lasts for 25 years and then gets a minor tweak to eliminate the word lifetime. Not a big deal. The graduates are still supposed to have a career in the regular Army, and so it stands until the all-volunteer Army shows up in the early 1970s. And, more importantly, the first female cadets arrive in 1976. Obviously, we lose the gendered pronoun his, but we also get some minor wordsmithing. tinkering with the first part, changing continued to continuing. What matters here is that West Point starts to get specific about exactly what qualities they want to impart on each graduate, namely character and leadership. Plus, we pick up the notion of service to the nation, although notice that in the 1977 version, service to the nation is provided as an officer of the regular Army. This 1977 version does not last long before there is some more tinkering. Motivate becomes inspired, and we add intellectual foundation. Fundamentally, these are some positive changes, even if they don't seem entirely necessary. Then, in 1987, 2 years before the Berlin Wall comes down, there are two strange changes. We move the word inspire, but that doesn't really count. Number one, we strip out all of the specifics about what each graduate should be and settle for some vague notion of professional growth. And number two, we split the connection of a lifetime of service to the nation away from the idea that that is performed as an officer. Now, I just want to take a second and pause here. I've said before that there is a discourse going on within the Army about what is important and how to set priorities. Beginning with this mission statement, I would suggest that you can start to see a discourse about what it means to have an all-volunteer force starting to peek through the mission statement. Notice how the idea of a career or a lifetime is not connected to service as an officer, but by 1992, they bring that back into the phrase of as an officer. In 1998, they move the word inspire around again, and they bring back the explicit notion of character. Here's where they add in the motto of duty, honor, country, and maybe you can see why I think it's a bit of a red herring because, well, it's a relatively new ad. And check this out. They change the regular Army to the U.S. Army. Personally, I kind of like that change. In the Army Reserve and the National Guard, there are many officers who started their career at West Point, and they have a fine service career. They do great things for the nation without technically being in the regular Army. Not only are those individuals quality officers, but it makes sense that West Point cadets should view a lifetime of service as possibly including service in the reserve components. Finally, the word selfless gets shoehorned in here, and no big deal. I mean, by 2005, it gets edited out again. So all in all, I'd say that this version is just kind of cleaning up language, no fundamental change. And so there we remain through the global war on terror until last Monday with the new mission statement. And by now, you should be able to clearly spot where the real changes have been made in this statement. First, they get rid of the phrase, so that each graduate, a phrase that survived since 1940. They abandon the mission of making each and every individual graduate a leader of character. Now it's okay to graduate individuals who don't live up to those values. Second, they change duty, honor, country to Army values, but like I've said before, I think that's more of a distraction. Next, they get rid of the phrase as an officer in the United States Army, and they opt for service to the Army. You can say that it sounds like I'm quibbling here, but it sounds like they are no longer focused on getting cadets commissioned into the Army. Instead, they intend to provide education at taxpayer expense with some sort of vague notion that the cadets will provide some kind of service to the nation. Obviously, there's some wordsmithing here. You add the word build, you change prepared to ready. Nothing really worthwhile getting excited over. But there is one piece of editing that I do not understand why it didn't send the right-wing media absolutely ballistic. They removed the words United States. Granted, this was a 1998 ad, but it just seems like kryptonite to remove United States without some kind of equivalent replacement, say replacing the nation with the United States of America. And so I want to go back to the message that went out to the long gray line last Monday. The superintendent of West Point says that both the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army approved this change to the mission statement. But did their staffs look closely and really understand what was changing? Did they approve these fundamental changes, or are they even aware of them? I don't know. But I'll tell you this. Either there is an intentional pivot going on, or this mission statement is going to get rewritten as soon as the unintended consequences are realized. Now, if you want to see a couple of techniques that West Point has always gotten right, you can watch this video to learn about the Thayer technique, and believe it or not, you can watch this video to see how to properly tie your shoes.